Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful webinar that Spur Impact and United Way of Delaware is putting on for you. We're excited to have Bruna from First Ascent join us today, and she is going to talk about branding for nonprofits and how consistent visuals and messaging really help build trust, attract donors and volunteers, which we are all after, to foster that community that we are striving for as nonprofit professionals. So please, if you have any questions, drop them into the chat. And we will answer them, but let me turn it over to Buddha and she can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to talk about branding for nonprofits. And thank you, of course, for Impact and United Way of Delaware for promoting this workshop. So first things first. Wait, let me make sure I can share the screen. So I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Bruna Viana. I'm design and marketing specialist here at First Ascent. I have over 4 years of experience working on brand identity, digital marketing for a variety of nonprofits. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about how a strong brand can benefit nonprofits and help you build trust, support your fundraising efforts, and help you grow. So before I get started, I wanted to turn it over to you. I wanted to ask you, what is a brand to you? And it can be anything. Just wanted to hear from you first. And feel free to drop it in the chat if you don't want to unmute.
A brand is an image that you want to be known by.
Awesome. Any other thoughts?
I think it's a representation, a little bit of who you are.
Perfect. Anything else? Cool. So I wanted to start hearing from you, and then I also want to clear some misconceptions. I heard awesome things, an image, a representation of who you are, and those are definitely part of what a brand is. I know some people might think a logo is a brand, or your colors, your name, or your services, and those are all important part or in pieces of what a brand is, but they're not all of it. The logo is a symbol for your brand, and then like the other pieces I mentioned, they're all part of what a brand is, but a brand is a result. It is your audience's gut feeling about your services or your organization. So it is your business reputation. So I invite you to look at these famous brand names that I brought here and think about what are some of the things that come to mind when you look at these names. So, for example, for Goodwill, you might think, you may or may not actually be able to picture their logo in your brain right now. But you may think about their multiple stores, you may think about their donation centers, or you may think about their community service, their job opportunities that they promote. Um, and then for Apple, for example, I'm pretty sure we all like can picture the iconic Apple logo. But maybe you think about a computer or an iPhone, but maybe you also think about innovation, high-end technology. Or maybe you haven't had great experiences with Apple, or maybe you're more like an Android fan, so you might describe Apple as like overpriced or overrated. So you can see how your own experiences with each brand help shape your perceptions and impact the way that you will describe a brand. So a brand is not only what's projected, it's also how it's perceived. It's the reputation that's created through your product or your service, the design, the look, the feel, the messaging, the organizational culture. So a brand is consistency, feelings, and reputation. So why should you care about this? Why is branding important for nonprofits? A strong brand can help nonprofits in a variety of ways. It can help you build recognition, trust, credibility among your donors and your community. So if you want people to trust you, you can't just tell them that you're doing something good. You have to show them that you're trustworthy, you're a well-established organization, that you contribute to a better society. So branding can help you consistently communicate your message and your values, and it helps our audience understand what you're doing, recognize what you stand for, and this will ultimately help you build trust with your target audience and help people get to know you. A strong brand can also strengthen emotional connections between the audience and your organization. Every nonprofit has a story to tell, and branding transforms that story into an emotional connection through impactful testimonials, uplifting campaign visuals, and etc. A strong brand can also optimize and support your fundraising efforts and your organizational growth. If people have a positive perception of your brand, they'll be more inclined to donate their time and their money to your organization. So now that we've established what a brand is, what it's not, and how it can help nonprofits, let's talk about how a brand is built. I like to think about this in two phases. The first phase is building a vessel, and the second phase is filling it. So, to exemplify this, let's think about the first time you meet a person, very first time you're seeing someone. You might notice a few things about them. Maybe you really like their outfit, or maybe they remind you of someone you know, but you don't have much more information about them to form a solid opinion on them as a person. But as you interact with that person, you may start learning more about them, and that will shape the way you describe them. So, for example, if every time you meet that person, they have a very good joke to tell, you might start describing them as funny, or maybe they're always late, they're never on time, and you might describing them as just not reliable. So on your first interaction with that person, you saw their vessel, you saw what they project outwardly. And every time you interact with them and as you get familiar with them, that vessel starts getting filled with meaning based on the experiences that you have with that person. So, similar to my example with the person, when you're first building a brand, it's like you're building that empty vessel. And that vessel will be your audience's first impression of your organization. This vessel is built through some visual elements. So, of course, your logo, your colors, your fonts, and then your strategy and your content strategy will also help shape that vessel. So, taglines, your messaging strategy, your voice and tone. And here, just to start explaining some of these terms. So, voice and tone, so your voice is your brand's personality, and your tone is the emotional inflection applied to your voice. So, it's how you're speaking to your audience. For example, is the organization's voice authoritative and bold, like a legal advocacy group, or is it warm and community focused, like a local food bank? All of these things will help shape that vessel that your audience will come in contact first. When you're building your brand, you should take into consideration some core identity questions. The first one I have here is, why do you do what you do? I was watching this really interesting TED Talk, and the speaker was talking about how people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's what motivates them, that's what connects them with you. So, and this is especially true for nonprofits because your mission is at the core of what you do. And also, you're not necessarily selling a product. So, your why is going to be very important to be communicated. Other very important questions are, how do you do your work? What it is that you're doing, of course, and who's the beneficiary of your work? Who is it that you're serving? And this is going to be your audience, right? And I have a recommendation here that is to avoid personal bias in the decision-making process. It can be very tempting, especially when we're talking about developing a logo, choosing a color palette. It can be tempting to let our own personal preferences and biases get in the way of making these decisions. So always go back to these questions that we mentioned here, your why and especially your audience, when you're making these decisions, because at the end of the day, those are the ones who are going to be the most impacted by your work. And another piece of advice here is that branding starts internally. Your volunteers and your staff, they are the primary brand ambassadors. So if they can't answer your why and your how questions consistently, then the external audience won't be able to either. So once you have your vessel ready, it's time to fill it. So although building that visual element or the vessel is very important, is a very important part of a brand, at first it will be empty, like we talked about before. And it's like that person you've met for the first time. So meaning is going to be poured into it through the experiences that are created, through your audience's experiences with your organization. So that's why it's important to be consistent and accurate. So when it comes to consistency, you have to make sure you're making consistent use of your brand visual elements. So your logo, your colors, your fonts, photography, everywhere in every touch point. Also, make sure you make use of uniform messaging, your voice, your tone across different touch points. And then, of course, making sure that messaging that your organization is putting out there is accurate. It actually represents who you are, it's accurate to what you're doing. So, just making sure everything's up to date. And then, something that's important is that this consistency is important for every piece of content, not just big marketing campaigns or ad campaigns. Every email, every flyer, social post, or anything that you're putting out there helps shape your brand. So it's important to be consistent everywhere. And then show your impact. Your organization's work reflects your mission, your values, culture, and brand. So showcase the day-to-day work that you're doing that deserves your audience's attention and support. So to help, I wanted to have some actionable tips and recommendations to share with you. So first, I wanted to recommend that you get familiar with and follow your organization's brand guidelines. So, brand guidelines are pretty much a set of rules that define how a brand should look, feel, sound. It contains elements such as the color codes that for your color palette, how your logo should or shouldn't be used, what fonts should be used. So make sure you're getting familiar with that document and that everybody within the organization is following those rules. And if your organization doesn't have brand guidelines, I definitely recommend you take some time and create like a one-page cheat sheet, like literally something simple with all of the correct color codes, fonts, something that can serve as reference for your organization. Following this helps ensure consistency that we've talked about, which is crucial for building a strong brand. Just 1 second so I can drink some water. My second tip is keep all of your assets, so all of your logo files, high resolution photos, the brand guide, in one shared folder. If you use the Google Workspace, I know you can share a folder with multiple people within the organization, but I know there's other ways, Dropbox or any cloud, service that you have access to. Just having everything accessible prevents staff from, for example, using old pixelated logos or photos that aren't on brand. And it also saves time just knowing where to find things can be so helpful. And we know like nonprofits are so busy, your hands are full. So just it makes your life easier. So having that one place, the go-to place where everybody knows they'll find the right assets to use, just makes everything much easier. And speaking of making your life easier, my next tip is create templates. So, templates to help you manage different types of content, email templates, templates for social media posts, templates with the sizes that are correct for each platform, which I know can be a lot. So, having those ready to go can be so helpful. And a tool that I listed here that I know a lot of people use is Canva. Canva is a great resource. One thing, if you use Canva Pro, they have a brand kit resource or feature. So it's kind of like that cheat sheet for your brand guide. It lets you upload your logos, it lets you set the colors of your brand. And that makes sure that everybody's pulling from those resources, everybody's using consistent imagery, and it helps with consistency and it also saves time. And I know some people can kind of see templates as like a little limiting when it comes to being creative, but I don't think we should look at them that way at all. They are a tool and they're like a starting point. And it just ensures that you're using I think I know I'm repeating this word a lot, but it just helps you be consistent and it saves you time. And you can always duplicate, modify, just making sure everything has the same feel and look and belongs to the same family, if we want to call it that way. My next tip is be able to state what you do in one clear sentence. People need to know and remember what you do. So keep your messaging focused and clear. Try to avoid jargons, $10 words. Um, Complicated and flowery message can just, they're bad communication. People will retain information much better if it's clear, simple. So state what you do simply and confidently. I have a couple of examples here. So first one is a bad example of how to state what you do. For example, we leverage community partnerships to facilitate holistic solutions for food insecurity. There's a lot of words here. People are not gonna be able to immediately absorb, understand, and remember what you're doing. A much better way for you to do it is to say, we run a food pantry that feeds 500 families a week in Middletown. It's much simpler, easy to understand. So make sure you're being clear in the way you're describing what you do. The next tip is develop three key messages. These are the things that you want every audience member to remember. And you probably have more than three things or three messages that you want to communicate. You probably do more than three things. And that's great. You can communicate that through, like on your website, through blog posts or different pages. But when you're thinking about your social media, like developing a social media plan, thinking about being regular on social media, keep the content focused on for months at a time. So try to focus on like three key messages. And then have a proof point for each one. Proof points can be statistics, awards, stories of success. So I have a few examples to share with you. So let's say we have a fictional homeless services organization. Three key messages can be: one, we help people move from the streets into stable housing, and 85% are still housed a year later. Two, anyone can become homeless. The average person is one paycheck away. Three, housing alone isn't enough. We provide a support that helps people stay housed. Let me tell you about Jennifer and her kids who came into our shelter 2 years ago and now are thriving. So keep this in mind when you're developing your content strategy and you're working on the content that you're sharing. My next tip is, again, consistency, repetition. Repetition matters. The rule of seven in marketing suggests that people need to hear something more than 7 times before it sticks. So once you, who are working with your organization and doing what you do, once you are tired of seeing, hearing, reading your branding and your brand messaging everywhere, that's when people are just starting to recognize and retain it. So repetition, repetition, repetition. And my last tip is mine stories within your own organization. Try to keep a shared running list of stories. You and your team, you're doing great work every day. Even if you might think that what you're doing isn't remarkable, it's worth remarking on. So anything you tell your partner at the end of the day or you share with a friend over cocktails, that's worth sharing. Don't be afraid to ask your community members for stories, testimonials, and turn them into impactful content that you can share. And even if you've already shared a story, you can always share it in different ways. and specifically talking about social media, it's a great way to repurpose content. If you've shared a testimonial one way, you can share it a different way a few days later, a few weeks later. But definitely share stories that will help you connect with your audience and your audience feel like your stories are resonating with them. And finally, I wanted to share a real life example with you of us building a vessel and then some of the ways that this vessel has been filled with meaning over time. So, but before I talk about it, I wanted to again turn it over to you and ask you what feelings or thoughts come to mind when you're looking at these examples that I brought from the Delaware Center of Justice's visuals. Anything.
I feel like
You can
the
see consistent like coloring throughout. There's not like a splash of red, fire engine red on any of them. Like they really do complement the colors all the way through.
Awesome.
I like the historical image that they include because that really helps like establish their credibility. It builds trust between me, like the audience, and who I could be working with.
Awesome. I'm also trying to look at the impact numbers. I saw.
Even, I was going to say, even subtly, the artwork that's used is handshakes or community. It's people connection oriented.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, those are all. I'm glad that that resonated because those are all part of the strategy and the work that has been done to create and build this brand and to continue to build this brand as the years go by. So, First Ascent in 2020, we developed the brand identity for Delaware Center for Justice. So we wanted to create a logo that reflected that the strength and momentum. So we first to reiterate some of the things I heard, the consistent imagery, colors throughout. Those are all the ways that we were able to apply that brand identity that was created and then apply it on different touch points. And that's what we were talking about before, visually consistent, and then someone also mentioned impact numbers, which is also something we just discussed. All of that helps create, the audience will feel like hopefully there's data to back up what this organization is talking about. It creates that emotional connection as well. But talking a little bit more about building that vessel, because I know we talked about developing a logo, colors. Everything here had was created with purpose and backed by the research we did and their audience, the target audience, their history. So the colors were not just because we liked the blue and the gold. The blue and the imagery here, the historical imagery, is to honor their history. They've been around for over a century. But then the yellow had the goal to create the looking forward, the energy that they're trying to, create justice and move forward as we go. And of course, after the colors are picked and the logo is created, then it's time to apply it on different touch points. So we have here an example of direct mail that they sent to their donors, social media posts, an email. Everywhere you're able to recognize DCJ through the colors, through the imagery, through that sense of community. That's what's so important to them, and that's communicated through the photography as well. So I hope that what we talked about here today can help you go back and apply that to your own organization as well. If you don't have an established brand yet, hopefully that helps you get that started. And if you already have all the visuals established, hopefully that helps you solidify your brand and start communicating what you do and help you continue to grow and build trust among your community. And with that, I want to say thank you and open the floor for any questions.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. This was really packed with solid, useful material.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. It's my pleasure. I'm trying to open the chat too. I think I lost it. I
So
found it.
I have a question for you on the a lot of the nonprofits that are on this call and that participate in Do More 24 Delaware are really volunteer run. Very few of them actually have staff, and so I my question to you is, you know, you talked a little bit about Canva and the branding kit and how to help streamline. What would be some like key things? You talked about that cheat sheet, but like what would be key things that a volunteer group should have on that brand kit?
Mhm.
Knowing that skill sets are limited, bandwidth is limited, what should be a couple key things?
That's great. A great question. I would say definitely your colors because like we saw and you mentioned, Jen, like you didn't see a splash of red in, any of the materials. Just making sure those colors are there. Your logo usage. Just, that the logo isn't stretched or modified. So logo colors are very important to be there. The fonts, and if you have established fonts, or at least if you don't have a set font name, if you use mostly sans serif, for example, you can write that there, and then everybody will know that they should go for that style of font. So I think those three pieces are like base pieces that should be there for sure. And even if you have direction for photography, I know if you have Canva Pro, you can get photography directly from there, stock photography. So if there is photography that you should avoid, um, then a sentence is enough to just say avoid photography that portrays this or that, or focus on photography that shows diversity if that's something that's important, important for you for the organization to communicate.
I think that's a great point too. It's like it's not just the things that we want, but also the things that we don't want. I've seen in a couple branding guides of like you do not write the organization's name with bullet points. You do not use a hyphen. So even thinking through of like things you don't want to be used
Mhm.
is a great point too. Kadeen had a question. How many templates should we have? What would be a good number on that one?
A really good question. I don't know if there's a set number. I would say look if you have already content that has been posted, let's say for social media, just for the sake of the example. I would look at the types of content that you consistently put out. So let's say you like to share testimonials with someone's photo and then the quote. I would say you should create a template for that because every time you have a new testimonial, it's so easy to replace that photo and replace that quote. Or if you share stats, a template where there's the number highlighted and a little description. So I would look at the content that your organization usually puts out, and I would try to create templates based on those, the base templates, and then you can build from there. And the same, just a note on the brand guidelines as well. That is a living document. It doesn't have to be a one, like once and done. Sometimes you notice that something went out and it wasn't the greatest, it shouldn't have been, or you learned from, or you just, revisited your strategy and you reset that strategy. So that's gonna be something to be updated on the brand guide. It is definitely a living document that gets updated with time. I see another
There's a
question.
really good question in the chat. It says, what advice or how would you reinforce people across the organization to follow brand guidelines?
Oh, I love this question. That is a really good question. I think you could. I don't know if I know people are so busy, so it's hard to be like, let's everybody meet this day at this time to talk about it. But if you have the chance, I think it's a great opportunity to just reset, um, just set the expectations, and this is how where we want to go. And I think anytime someone else joins the team, I think it's a great document to be if you have like an onboarding process. It's a good way to include that as a step as well. Review the document. But that's a really good question.
I just
I
wanted to
something
add, like, so United Way just went through a new branding. We went through a new brand and we had the same issue, and we still are having that same issue, believe me. I think everybody does. But one of the things we did was we did a 30-minute virtual lunch and learn. So we just like kind of like, hey, this is the brands, like went over stuff. We did an audit of everybody's. We started with small things like their signature lines. Like, okay, is everybody's signature line correct? And some people's was like really big because for whatever, their font was really big, and some people's was small, and some people had different, like just all a bunch of stuff. So we did that, and then we created this, which you guys can see too. I put it in the chat, but we created a website. So along with, we have a brand guideline, but it's on paper, but we created like an easy reference website where they can like download their logo and things like that. Similar to how we do for you all for Do More 24, where you can like, everything's at your fingertips. And we did that so that people could just automatically go there. And I think you have to make it for your staff like really easy for them, because they're it's not their job. Like they're not thinking about it all the time like you are. So you have to make it so it's like dummy proof. Like if this is not your job and it's not what you're thinking about, you could just easily go there. So I think all of those things, Bruna, you did a great job of explaining.
Thanks. And I love that idea of a branch and learn. And it also, having that shared folder where everything lives, I think it's a great, like, it's easy for people. They know where to go to find what they need, and it just makes it easier for everybody to use the same things. But I really like the idea of a branch and learn. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm. I have a question. We talked about projecting a brand and deliberately putting components of a brand out there. What's a low-cost way of measuring how our brand is actually being perceived by the consumer rather than doing a high-cost focus group?
Hmm. I think, yeah, that is interesting. I think there's easy ways. I mean, not focus groups necessarily, but you can gather feedback through, you could have questions even on social media posts. You can have little quizzes, or just ask people questions. Um, I know in-person interactions as well, you can gather feedback, but that's something that I have to think about and share
Okay,
with you. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Joe,
because focus group is the easy way out, but that's
Yeah.
more cumbersome.
Joe, one of the ways that we did it was because something called Net Promoter Score. It's one question. A lot of banks and larger corporations use it, but it's starting to be used in smaller organizations. It's basically a way to um measure the people who are your promoters, or the people who are like gun ho happy, love your brand, and they're talking really great things. And it subtracts the people who are what we call detractors, like the people who like basically are going to give you a 0 out of 10 every time because whatever you like did something to them 10 years ago. And so it's asking them one question, and the question is typically, how likely are you to recommend whatever to a friend or colleague? And you answer 0 out of 10. You've probably answered this in or seen it in many things that you've done throughout, like the car, like if you buy a car or whatever. And that one question, it comes up with a score. And that score can help you measure how people generally, and you can ask anybody, you can put it out to the universe, you can like ask at every event, you can ask and so um it's not as quantitative or qualitative as a focus group, but what it can do is kind of give you a number to start, and then what you can look forward to is like how moving this number so that you have more promoters than detractors in your general community and the people that you serve.
Yeah, that's a good high level view. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pamela, I know you had your hand raised.
And Kadeen has a question in the chat, so you can answer that after that, Jen.
Hi, all. I just wanted to know because everybody was talking about Canva, and I just wanted to know, is we do a lot in Canva, and is that the best way to establish your color palette, your hex codes, etc., through Canva because I know we have a problem when we do something in Canva, we take it to the printer. It's a different PMS color. Nothing matches. Also, if we send out for swag, it's the same thing. So we have like three different, codes for our coloring, and they're all different. So I'm just wondering, is Canva the best program to establish our colors, or should we be talking to maybe going to a printer to be able to establish like the true color? So we want everything to come out the same way. Our brochures look different. It's like a shade lighter or a shade darker. It's never the same color. So I'm just concerned about the things that we do in Canva and nothing matches when we send it out.
I love this question. So Canva, I think is great for digital. The thing about color is, like you mentioned, there's different color codes depending on where you're gonna use. And when you have a color code for a screen, you might need a different color code for print. That's because of print limitations. Not every color, especially really vibrant colors, they're not gonna translate well to print because for print, colors tend to be more muted. So, like a vibrant, beautiful blue, for example, will probably look a little less saturated on print. That's already one thing that unfortunately, I guess, is the reality. But if one thing for sure, I would say talk to the printer and ask what formats they need. They usually will tell you what document format they need and what color code environment they need. And that could be CMYK, RGB, Pantone. So based on that, then I think you can choose the best programs. I know for us here for print, we don't use Canva. We use the Adobe software. So we're gonna use Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, because those they're they're the standard for the industry, and then they allow us to set different codes. But that's definitely a challenge. Even when you have everything established, the colors are going to look a little different. But I agree with you. We should always strive for consistency. That's what we talked about here. So if you notice that there's one color for your organization that tends to look different, you can do some research. I know there's some online converters. You can look at like how that code can convert to like from RGB to CMYK, for example. And that can be a way to make sure it's looking as close as possible. It's not always going to be one-to-one, but you're going to be able to be more consistent. But definitely ask the printer. They are very helpful. They usually help you find the right file format and everything. But I love that question because it's a struggle.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I see the other question about for those of us who are board run and have less time, how many posts are needed weekly, monthly when attempting to strengthen our brand? There's a really good question. I think I like to think it about more about consistency than a number that you should always have. Like I could tell you 5 times a week, but if one week you're gonna post 5 times and then not be able to post for a month and then post 2 times, I think that can be less helpful. So I would say as consistent as you can be, if that's twice a week, but if your audience can start expecting, like to hear from you on that frequency, I think that's more important than try to post a certain number of times because the algorithm, of course, with social media nowadays, as there's more pressure to be out there more, but I think being consistent should be the focus. And then, of course, I think a couple of times a week, so your audience you stay top of mind among your audience. But I don't know if there is a set number. I just think that consistency is more important than try to set a number.
Think to piggyback off of that, Kadeen, is to also think about what platforms you are on. What avenues is your community at? Are they on email? Are they on Facebook? Are they on TikTok? And really gear, again, your bandwidth to Bruna's point of like consistency on one or two platforms versus 8 platforms. And really focus in on that. If you know that your donors are mostly 45 to 65 females, then maybe Facebook is the best spot for you. Or Instagram would be the better, a better spot if you're trying to get a younger demographic. Again, think through on what your goals are for 2026 and 2027, and really focus your strategies around that, on that platform. I think that's key too. I think I see with a lot of volunteer run boards, no staff or limited staff, is that they try to be everywhere, and that's their downfall. If they just would focus on one or two platforms, that would be really key, for their success and helping them build that brand recognition. And then they can take that brand recognition in a couple years or 18 months and move it over to another platform. So really thinking through what that strategy looks like.
Jen, can I also just add, I love this question. It's also not, there's not like a secret number. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to post every day for this month, and then this is like definitely going to this is going to make all the difference. It's really, when it comes to social, a lot of it's about engagement. And what you could have, you could post once a month, but if 100 people like it and share it and like post it, then that's a really awesome post, and that's probably better than you posting every day and only 2 people saw it. And so I think what I would focus on is quality over quantity and consistency, like they said, like definitely quality over quantity. So like if you can consistently post once or twice a week, but they're quality posts, and you make sure all of your volunteers are liking that post and sharing it, and you make sure that you put it in your newsletter, because if you're not really on social, a lot of times like you have a good newsletter list. If you have a good newsletter list, you're like, hey, at the bottom of it, like, hey, make sure you like us on Facebook, and look, we have a new post. Can you like and share it? Like if you do that and focus on those things, then you'll see a much bigger bang for your buck. And then as you grow, then you'll start wanting to, post a little bit more and get a little bit more organic engagement. But like the real thing is like quality posts that like get people talking. You want people to say something about your posts and share it, and like before you just want to post for no reason.
I wanted to touch back on one of the things, Bruno, you said early on in your presentation about, asking staff members for testimonials or content, client stories. One thing that I've done at one organization I worked with was at our weekly meetings or our bi-weekly meetings, we would have mission moments. And everybody around the table would have to say something positive that happened, or it could be a challenge, but really focusing on capturing those offhand stories, those offhand comments, and then somebody would write them down into a document. And then it would be somebody's responsibility. Oh, this was a really good comment. Let me follow up with Jen and see, get more information about this. So that was also something to, integrating it into your daily workflow so that you're not just sitting, oh, it's time for my newsletter. I don't have content. I don't have a testimonial for this post that needs to go out. You already have that running list and you've gathered it from everybody. It definitely takes a little bit of time to train people, to get people into that rhythm. But that was something, that was hugely helpful, for me in one of my organizations.
I love that, Jen. It's like this idea of like just teaching everybody to be reporters for you. Like everybody can be a part of your social media strategy, even the people who think they know nothing about social media. Like everybody can have a little piece of it, and they know more than they think they know. Because even, I was thinking, Jen, as you were talking, the social media strategy has changed over time. Like what we did 10 years ago, we can't do now. Facebook is different. They keep changing the algorithm. Instagram is different. TikTok is way different. Like all of the things that you need, even Twitter, like everything that you need to make to make something go viral is so much different now. So the truth is that even having Jen said, do mission moments. I love that so that you already have them in your back pocket like a library. But also, like, even having like your volunteers or your staff, the ones that are okay with it, post themselves, like they post, because a person posting gets more, like, it's more organic views and things like that than an organization posting. Even little things like on Instagram, if I'm a company, I can't use certain music. But if I'm an individual, I can use like more fun licensed music. And so one way to get around that, the Instagram will probably kill me. They might be listening because everyone's listening. But like one way I've been doing to get around that, if I want really cool music on a post, is like I personally will post and then I'll collaborate with my organization. So it's on my organization's page too. But I get the fun music that my organization couldn't have because it was an organization and we're not allowed to have, like, you know what I mean, licensed music. So like even little, like, it just matters so much. Like if people because that's what social media is supposed to be about anyway. So if people talk about your organization, so even if you plant those people and then you have them collaborate with you or you have them share, it's like you have it shared on your page, that all will help the algorithm and help your influence and help your posts go more widely.
Consider, if you're going to do that, take full advantage of Bruna's suggestions of having that branding kit, having the logos easily accessible in a Dropbox, in a Google folder, in a website like United Way. Have those things if you're going to embark on that, which I love that idea, but have those things easily accessible so that your board members, your volunteers, your staff can quickly post, this really cool statistic or this fun fact and quickly grab your logo, quickly grab the color scheme, or they can be like, oh, I want to post this picture of this patient. Be like, well, is that appropriate? They can quickly go to the branding guide and it will say no pictures of patients, so having all of that easily accessible and pulled together ahead of time just saves so much headaches. While also, empowering everybody else around you. Bruna, I want to turn it over to you. Any final thoughts, recommendations, suggestions to this group of nonprofit leaders here as we embark on Do More 24 Delaware?
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for participating and joining. I think if we can take one advice is consistency. And I know I used that word many, many times today, but I think just striving for being consistent will help you strengthen your brand. And yeah, thank you so much. This was really, really great.
Well, thank you. And I also want to put out there, Bruna and the team from First Ascent will be joining us tomorrow, January 29th, from 4 to 5 for marketing office hours. So if you have more in-depth marketing questions about your Do More 24 Delaware campaign, please join us. That link is on the Do More 24 Delaware training webinar pages. So that will be tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. And then they will also be joining us again on February 12th from 8:15 to 9:30 for our friends who are in the Newcastle County area. And you can come in person and ask one-on-one questions on that. So I hope you will circle back because Bruna is just one of an amazing team over at First Ascent. So please take full advantage of them over the next couple weeks. I encourage you to follow her on LinkedIn, reach out to her and the entire team at First Ascent. But thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, as always, for Do More 24 Delaware, please email Tiara and myself at team@domore24de.org. And we will see you soon. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.